Today's guest is Dr. Heather Hirsch, and I am very excited to bring her to you because I found her on Instagram and she is a wealth of information. She specializes in menopause. So we had lots to talk about because that is I'm actually post-menopausal is what I found out from her. I didn't even know the different phases. So I just we automatically say we're menopausal, but menopause is actually only the 12 months after your period stops. I didn't not know that. So the period after that starting that 13th month is postmenopausal. So I learned something new in this episode, but she's great. And we had a great conversation, talked about lots of things, how she got into it. And what she talks about is kind of the misinformation and real gap in women's health as it relates to menopause and how that's changing, fortunately. So will make life a lot easier for some of us, and also all the solutions that are available now that just weren't available a short like 7 or 8 years ago. So she's great. She's super knowledgeable and she's so passionate. She was, if you're on my YouTube channel, she's like me talking with her hands. So I hope you get something out of this episode and actually helps you if you're dealing with any kind of menopausal symptoms. All right. Welcome to another episode of Living Your Sparked Second Half. I have with me today Heather Hirsch, who is a doctor and she specializes in menopause. So I thought that when I saw her on Instagram, I thought, oh my gosh, I have to have her on the podcast and we can talk about a myriad of things. So welcome to the show, Heather.
Oh, well, I am so excited to be talking to your audience about a topic I think is so important since, I just answered a question today. Once you're postmenopausal, you're always menopausal. So you will be in postmenopause your entire second half.
Yeah, I did a post yesterday about one of the great things about aging is not having a period. Somebody answered TMI, but it's like, seriously, I mean, I think about my kids. I have two daughters and I'm like, I will always have tampons in the house because I remember after my mom stopped having her periods, I would go there and I'd need some and they wouldn't be there. But it's like, I'm so glad I don't have to worry about like wearing white pants or like all those things. But there are disadvantages. And so one of the things before I hit record, I told you is like, I have experienced this vaginal dryness, which is not fun.
No. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I have one of the things that I saw that you post about is that there's different remedies for it. And I just have to tell you about my own experience because I think it'll help other people. And I know I've mentioned having it on the podcast before, but I hadn't taken the steps to do anything about it. Well, actually I did. I have a great doctor. I have a great gynecologist. Yes. She is my age. And I love that she's always like relatable because she's kind of going through what I'm going through. And she prescribed me some, and you can tell me how, if I'm mispronouncing it, but progesterone.
You got it. Progesterone.
Okay, progesterone. Yeah. So she says that because I was on hormone therapy because I had super bad hot flashes. So I probably was on it I was on the patch. I had these little sticky things.
Yep.
That worked for a while. And then of course went off it because I stopped having the hot flashes. But I had this terrible dryness because I didn't have the hormone therapy anymore. And then she said, well, try these suppositories. I think she started with a cream that she said, try this. But do you know that I went and got the prescription filled and I didn't start taking it? It just sat there on my shelf.
That is so common.
Yeah.
So common.
Yeah.
Because, so many women will say to me, I was just so scared. I read the box, I read the label, and I was just paralyzed. And I cannot tell you how many times I have heard my patients, my students say, I picked it up and it just sat there.
Yeah. Yeah. And I even put it by my toothbrush because I thought, well, I'll see it. And there was two things. I think it was fear because I thought, oh, it's estrogen, but I think vaginal estrogen is different, that like what it is. And so you can tell me about that. But I also thought, oh my gosh, it's such a pain to have to do this every single night. But I had it sitting there and I kept checking the when it was expiring, and I was
Yep.
like, and then I had, unfortunately, had because it's not cheap, and I fortunately had quite a time before it expired, and so I went in to see her again for my regular checkup. She's like, "Well, how's it going?" And I was like, I had to admit, well, I'm not a very good patient because it's still
You
sitting
know,
there.
yeah, there's so many gems in this story here, and a lot of my patients will come in and they're like worried or they're embarrassed or they're like ashamed. They're like, well, I'm sorry to tell you. And this is so common. I think really one of the reasons I love being a menopause doctor, I actually, we were talking offline, I started as OBGYN and I love delivering babies, but really I loved counseling women to make difficult decisions. And, after I did my internal medicine residency and then a fellowship in menopause, it's just been a wonderful career journey because I get to do this, exactly this, help women make really difficult decisions, help them, to realize the benefits, the safety profiles, and then find something that works with what still feels okay with you, because everyone is always going to be a little different. But the scenario of trying so many different things, waiting, worrying, more time going by, like that's so common.
Yeah, and you're really helping people significantly because menopause can be a real struggle for a lot of people. And I know with the hot flashes, it was like was not sleeping at all at night, and I was desperate for something.
Yeah.
So the vaginal dryness thing is just, I started to have a lot of achiness down there. And she said, you need this, and you need to solve this problem. And
Yep.
it's because it's really starting to impact me physically. So I was like, okay. And then it's just like any habit, it's just like part of my nightly thing now. And it's not a big deal at all. And I'm like,
Why did I wait so long?
yeah, why did I wait so long? So can you explain the difference between like legitimate hormone therapy where like I had a patch versus just applying it to the vagina? And I will also say that my doctor said that there's so many new products coming out that it's really kind of a neat place to be in medicine because lots of
Yeah.
solutions are available now.
Yeah, exactly. So, one of the reasons I became so interested in treating women with menopausal symptoms is because there's so many myths and misconceptions. And I think it is the most crucial transition that women experience. When you think about the big transition, there's puberty, and then there's, your first baby, and then there's postpartum, and there's so much support and knowledge around those things. But what happens, often between the ages of 45 and 55, not everyone's 45 to 55 natural menopause, but the majority of women, is that you start to experience this significant transition where you develop symptoms, you can't sleep. There's this domino effect of, not feeling productive at work, not feeling as sharp as you did, feeling like you've aged, gaining weight, hair loss, self-esteem deteriorate, all these things. And that transition really sets up women for how they're going to experience the second part of their lives, how they're going to experience their 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, how long you're going to live, what chronic diseases you're going to develop. So I think it is so fascinating. Now, when it comes to hormone therapy, there's so much to debunk here and there's so much to go through. But your main question right now is, all right, Dr. Hirsch, help my listeners distinguish between systemic hormone therapy and local vaginal hormone therapy. And the main thing to really know is that vaginal hormone therapy, like the vaginal estrogen tube that was sitting next to your toothbrush, the types of, we call them all different types of things, local estrogen, vaginal estrogen, topical estrogen, they all kind of have these, you'll hear doctors sort of throw out all these different terms. But estrogen that goes particularly, or estrogen only in the vagina for genitourinary syndrome of menopause isn't systemic. So you don't get any systemic risks like the ones that your doctor might talk to you about. You don't need to take a progesterone if you have an intact uterus. And there are a bunch of different kinds. So they don't carry the systemic risks. They're not going to help you with hot flashes. They're not going to help you with hair loss or bone health because they're just local. So the pros are you don't have to worry about any of the systemic risks. The downsides is you don't get any of the systemic benefits. However, really, really, really helpful for genitourinary syndrome of menopause, that vaginal dryness, that irritation. And it doesn't have to be just with sex, right? It can be sitting, standing, walking, exercising, wiping, recurrent urinary tract infections. So that's what local topical vaginal estrogens are for. Systemic hormone therapy, either a pill or a patch or a spray or a gel, is going to affect your entire body. So you will get benefits from head to toe, although now you're assuming a little bit more risk here. Now there's risks with every medication, insulin, aspirin, statins, there's risks with every medication, but that is the main difference. If I may just give you one more little factoid here, the reason so many people are scared of vaginal estrogens is because there is still a black box warning on them, except for progesterone, but I'll come back to that if we have a second, because progesterone is actually DHEA. So it's a slightly different version than estrogen. But that black box warning is on there inappropriately. It comes from the Women's Health Initiative, the results of the Women's Health Initiative taking oral Premarin or oral Prempro, and they slap those risks onto vaginal estrogens. That's a big reason so many people come back and say, Dr. Hirsch, I never took it. And I say, look, let's like walk through again why. And sometimes it's the fear of the safety. Sometimes it's just messy or it's gooby, or sometimes it's just, I'm just not sure I really need it. We can kind of dissect this, but when it does come down to the safety, a lot of people read that black box warning, it scares the bejeepers out of them. Many of us and menopause experts have tried to lobby the FDA to actually get that removed, but alas, it has not been removed. So the main difference is where that medicine is going to go and the risks associated with them.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's not, I have the suppository, like I said, and it's not messy at all. And the achiness went all away. So it like did what she said it would do. Yeah. Yeah. So yay. So, so I am like a new woman. Also, it's funny because when I was 47, I got divorced and rekindled with my old boyfriend from college. And so like I hadn't hit menopause yet. So everything was working and everything was amazing. But then soon thereafter, and on my period, I think was 1 month there and 1 month not. I wasn't like on and off and on and off.
You were just a switch.
Yeah. So the hormone therapy actually helped, I think, keep my sex life very like, it really helped a lot with, I didn't have, it delayed the vaginal dryness that I needed, plus helped the hot flashes.
Absolutely.
So yes, but I was told that I shouldn't, there's a certain point where you get too old to continue the hormone therapy.
So that's actually a myth, and that's been a little debunked. And what we now know, the NAMS stands for the North American Menopause Society, and that's kind of the governing body of evidence-based information about menopause in the US, and ACOG, which is the American College of OBGYN. In 2015, which actually wasn't, just recently, it was like 7 years ago, they said, look, if a woman starts hormone therapy within 10 years from her last period, which I'm going to guess you did because you kind of said you were 47 and then you kind of started after, that there is no time limit at which you have to stop. Just because you have a birthday or it's been X number of years, you don't have to just stop. Now that may frustrate you or listeners, but maybe, your symptoms are changed or life is different. There was an old mantra: if you had so many years to be on hormone therapy, or had to stop if your birthday ended in a 0 or a 5. And the reason that's changed is that actually that mantra came from if the age at which you started. And now what trumps that is that if you started within 10 years, actually it's shared decision-making on how long you want to take it for.
Yeah, interesting. Because she doesn't ever offer that as a solution anymore. Because I was like, that worked really well. But yeah. And I have no risk of breast cancer. And, I haven't had it. And my mother didn't have it. My sister hasn't had it. So I'm pretty safe in that regard. I know that's one of the factors that they look at.
Yeah. And, I think this is a really important point here, is that there definitely exists within the best doctors these gaps in menopausal training, which is another big reason I loved this aspect of women's health. I never went to medical school thinking like I want to be a menopause doctor, but when I really was exposed to these gaps in care, I thought, oh my gosh, we're doing such a disservice to the most important group of society, women aged 45 to 55, with all their knowledge and all their experience and all their emotional intelligence. We're doing such a disservice to them. And so, menopause and the whole transition and the whole hormonal change in chronic disease development is so interesting, but there exist these gaps in menopause education. And I really never blame a particular doctor. It's really because we still teach medical students what we learned about hormone therapy in 2002. It's been 20 years, and we are really teaching outdated and not evidence-based information. And most medical students most medical students get an hour of education on menopause, if at all. Mine was voluntary. Mine was, if you want to learn about menopause, come get free pizza for lunch. I kid you not. I kid you not. And residents, both internists who should also know about menopause because of its, because of its railroad tracks right through the development of chronic diseases, and OBGYNs who we think should know about menopause get very little training in menopause, and particularly hormone therapy management. And that's why these older mantras of, oh, well, you have to take the shortest dose for the shortest time still exist, even though there was a huge announcement in 2015 that was not necessarily the end all be all.
Yeah, I'm curious. Did you have patients that you experienced, and you were like, oh gosh, nobody's helping them, and there is this gap? Is that what happened, or was it just the free pizza?
No, the free pizza didn't do the thing. I don't even think I paid attention. I learned during the free pizza lesson that hormone therapy was really dangerous and you should never do hormone therapy. And that was
Wow.
2006 when I was in medical school. In 2006, that was really what, medical students were being taught. Hormone therapy, is really risky. Okay. Then I did my OBGYN residency, and I spent about a year because I always wanted to take care of women. So I thought, I needed to deliver babies, and being up in the middle of the night in surgery weren't necessarily my genius zones and my sweet spots. I don't think the word menopause was uttered once in that entire year of internship, although again, it's really heavy on obstetrics. But you got to remember, obstetrics and menopause are kind of polar opposites from each other. So it's wild that we throw them in the same specialty.
But when you think about it, is if you have a doctor who you love, and it's going to kind of be a lifetime doctor that you grow old with, you'd think you'd want to be a part that you can stay with them. I guess. I don't know. I don't know if that's,
that is, that is certainly the dream. And I think that because we as a species have, learned so much and evolved so much in the last several years, there's just so much to know that it's so hard for doctors, especially OBGYNs. Now, certainly I'll bring up the fact that they don't know enough about menopause, but they really have to know complex surgery and high risk obstetrics. And so they're so used to using their hands and running around that to sit down with someone and talk about hormone therapy for an hour, it's a totally different skill set than they really are set up to learn. Internists as well. So I don't think menopause was uttered a year during my year of OBGYN. And then I spent 3 years in internal medicine. And I believe, I probably had about an hour of menopause education. And the menopause education I learned in my residency at a great place, Case Western Reserve University Hospitals, was, well, if you have to use hormone therapy, if you've tried everything else, use the shortest dose for the shortest time. Well, I did fellowship at Cleveland Clinic, and it was advanced women's health training. And what that meant was you could find certain things about women's health that you really were interested in. One of my one of my colleagues went on to do women and weight. She was really interested in weight and obesity, and some trainees go on to do like women and pelvic pain. I was really interested in menopause because when I came in, women came from all over the country to fly to Cleveland to see my mentor, Dr. Thacker, to figure out what was mysteriously so wrong with them. Their doctor wouldn't give them hormone therapy. They said, no, you can't take it. I won't prescribe it. They didn't know anything about what was happening to them. And that's when I realized, oh my gosh, there is hundreds or thousands of women coming to one place, Cleveland Clinic, to get really good care. And everything I learned at my seemingly top-notch residency wasn't evidence-based. And then I realized that there was about 50 million women in the United States alone going through menopause. And I was like, this is my calling.
Yeah. What about your mom? Did you talk to her about it and what her experience had been, or if she's available to you?
Yes. So my mom always tells me her menopause was a little bit on the earlier side. She was still within the realm of natural, but on the bell curve, she was more like 46 or 47. So that's why I always joked, I had to have all my 3 kids right in a row. You don't always follow your mom's pattern, but we just, there's a lot of things about menopause that we don't know. So if you were to think, oh, is there some kind of inheritance here? I always joked, well, I had my kids right in a row. So my mom at the time was in her 60s. And so the peak of her symptoms were probably ages 47 to 55, symptoms, knowledge bomb last on average 5 to 7 years. So by the time I really became a bona fide menopause doctor, she was really through the symptomatic portion of it. She does have osteoporosis and bone loss. And so I've made sure that she is on a bone agent for that. She does have a couple of chronic diseases that she, follows up with her doctor on. But, she and I talk about menopause all the time, since it's something I talk about all the time. And it's funny, she really is still of that era of, well, you just suffer through it, right? So she's now, I'm calling my mom out for her age, right? But 70. And so she's probably a decade or more, older than your listeners, potentially. Not sure about your demographics, but really still that decade of, well, there was nothing you do, you just stick it out, right? So it kind of evolved slowly. Before my mom's decade, probably like my grandmother's decade, although she's not alive anymore, that's when everyone was given hormone therapy in the 80s and 90s. Well, I'm doing the math wrong. She probably was menopausal more like in the 60s, but regardless, for points purposes here in the 70s and 80s, it was standard practice to give everyone hormone therapy right after menopause. And then really it was like the 2000s, the early 2000s, 2000, 2010, 2012, where hormone therapy was this dangerous thing. Then it became the shortest dose for the shortest time. And now, 2022, there are doctors like me trying to really dispel these myths. And I, could talk about menopause all day. Clearly, I'm talking your ear off. There's just so many interesting factoids here that I just found so interesting and so vital to the lives of so many women, that if we ignored the impact that menopause has, whether you take hormone therapy or not, right? It is a public health crisis if we ignore menopause.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and you're I love your Instagram because, and if you want to say what your Instagram handle is, it's
Heather Hirsch, MD. Yeah.
Yeah.
I changed it a couple of times over the years. And so right now, with I actually should totally toot my own horn. I have a menopause book coming out next year, in June of 2023. Unlock Your Menopause Type. Amazing. Oh my gosh. And I can say this because I have a writer, Stacey Kalina, who helped write the book with me, but it's an amazing, everything you need to know about all the different types of menopause. You can learn what your type is based on, the phenotypes I've seen. But with my book coming out, I was so many different names on all these different platforms. I just made myself Heather Hirsch, MD, on all my social medias.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah. Cause you evolve as, and you might specialize in something else that's even more niche down from general menopause. Yeah. So one thing I saw that you had a book coming out, so that's great. I'm glad you mentioned that. And I guess you can pre-order it, cause I think there's a link in your bio.
You can pre-order it, interestingly, actually, this is sort of funny. My literary agent called me. She said, stop promoting your book so early. People are going to forget about it. But, if you want to order a copy of the book, it'll come in the summer and you'll totally forget. And it'll be like an exciting present. You'll be like, yes, I love 6 months ago, me who ordered this present for myself. So, I definitely, if you want to pre-order, the link is in my bio on Instagram.
Yes. But I want to say also that your Instagram channel, or whatever you want to call it, your feed is so informative. And so I want to point people there if they have questions about menopause. So one of the things that I learned is that you can actually find a menopause doctor, that there's a site to do that.
There is. Yeah. And the way to do that is to go to menopause.org. And the site actually hopefully will be updated soon, but you got to find this little bar that says find a provider on that homepage, and you can search by zip code.
Yeah.
for a NAMS certified physician. So that's not to say those are the only doctors, right? But I referenced NAMS, I think, a couple questions you asked me back. And what's great is that not all, but most NAMS doctors really strive to provide evidence-based information, about length of use of hormone therapy, non-hormone therapy alternatives over the, supplements to help all of your menopausal symptoms. And they have to attend our NAMS meetings every year. And so those are probably the best go-to reliable sources. If you have a gynecologist or an internist who doesn't know, much about menopause. Unfortunately, and it's not their fault. We got to change the educational system.
Yeah. And I guess you can ask, you might find your own doctor on there. You could ask if they're NAMS certified, right? NAMS certified. Yeah. And the other thing in the term that I just wanted to touch on, because I thought it was so funny, because I thought it was so great in terms of like what some people experience when they go to the doctor, is medical gaslighting.
Yes.
I heard I never knew what gaslighting was until I saw it on The Bachelor. And I was like, Googled it, what's gaslighting? And I was like, so can you like describe what that means? Because I think that will make a lot of people feel like heard and it could be happening to them and they don't even realize it.
Gaslighting is also a term that was, relatively new to me, but it's really, and a great example is, if there's a partnership and the one partner says like, I think that you are, it's weird that you're coming home late at night and you're not answering your phone. Like, and they say, no, you're crazy. I was here. I was home. I was just in the basement. You didn't hear me. And really the gaslighter is really trying to make the person feel like, they're losing their mind. So it's kind of when someone is trying to, they're definitely, not telling you the truth. And they're kind of putting the onus that like, no, you're the one that's crazy, right?
Yeah, it's like, to me, throwing somebody under the bus kind of thing, right? It's equivalent maybe, but it's kind of manipulative behavior, I would say. Yeah.
I don't think that, I think it's a term that most people are on social media are like, oh, what it would be medical gaslighting. It's kind of when you say to your doctor, like, I'm experiencing like this gas and the splitting, and I think it's hormones, or I think the waking is from the hormones, or my mood are changing, and I think it's from this. And a doctor looks at you and says like, no, those things are not related. And you're like, oh, okay, well, okay, maybe I'm crazy, right? You're not crazy. A lot of these things are related. A lot of things are hormonal. And there's a couple big factors at play here. Is one, your doctor's probably not malicious. They just haven't been educated. And that's not their fault. That's really because our medical education system, remember the free lunch lecture on menopause that was voluntary? It's still that way. So, the gaslighting isn't per se to say that the doctor is actually trying to make you feel crazy. It's just kind of this feeling of like, often women will leave and say, okay, I guess that there's nothing I can do, or I am just crazy, or these things aren't related, when in fact, that's not true. You're actually probably right the whole time. I always tell my patients, your body the best, your body better than me, you live in it. And I always try to help women put pieces together and be really open-minded. And that's kind of that medical gaslighting. This comes up a lot when, in the past, women will say, I thought I was in perimenopause, but, and I had all these symptoms. In retrospect, it was definitely menopause. When my doctor said, oh, no, you're too young. Oh, no, that can't be that. And those things are really actually, they're harmful, because menopausal hot flashes can last many, 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 many years. Insomnia can start in perimenopause, continue forever. It's that, it really is the beginning process of chronic diseases for women. And so that medical gaslighting can certainly be this, constellation of, well, my doctor told me that these things are just not related. And that's harmful, because they can be.
Yeah. I think it's a little bit different than romance gaslighting. It's just dismissing and not really believing, or not feeling like, it's like you're not being heard, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons, so recently I left seeing patients one-on-one to join a new company called MIDI Health. And MIDI is a platform that we're building where we can do virtual clinics for menopause. And we take insurance. So that is going to be building and building and building in 2023 as we start getting into more and more states. But I really do think so many more women should have access to menopausal care, or at least, be counseled on what are the changes your body's going to go through. What are your options? Remember in gym class in 5th grade when we got this is what will happen when you get your period talk? Why don't we have that for menopause?
Yeah. Yeah, that's so true. And what are just, as we wrap up, I would love to just for you to describe kind of what the common symptoms, because I think sometimes people, they're still getting their period. And I think we equate not getting your period with menopause, but I know there's other symptoms. Well, peri-menopause is really kind of your specialty too, right? When it's starting to happen.
Exactly. Perimenopause is really truly when you're starting to get menopausal symptoms. You have these periods, not bleeding period, but chunks of time, periods of times where you're in this low estrogen state, but you may still be getting sparse periods. Very infrequently is it like 1 day, 1 month period, 1 month the next, like yours. You had kind of a nice sort of like, it was very obvious transition. But perimenopause is really when there's a volatility in hormone levels, you can start to develop symptoms. And then menopause, 12 months of no period. And then once you're menopausal, you're always post-menopausal. But the average length of symptoms for women in that entire transition is anywhere from 5 to 10 years. Something like vaginal dryness you experienced, we talked about at the beginning of the show, that is progressive. So really without your progesterone, without local vaginal estrogen, it's not going to get better because we won't be making estrogen again.
And my eyes too, they get dry. It's like my contacts are like right to my
dryness.
Eyes. Yeah.
Really common symptoms are, of course, your hot flashes, night sweats, vaginal dryness, skin changes, including dryness, hair loss, loss of libido, but there's uncommon ones. For example, heart palpitations. People think that that's cardiovascular, but that can be due to the hormonal changes, visual changes, vertigo or dizziness, bloating, gas, arthritic type joint aches and pains, allergies, skin irritation. There are more uncommon symptoms too, which is, going back to that saying, I think this bloating really started around when my period started changing. Those are really telltale signs and really important for women to watch out. Any symptom goes in my book.
Yeah, that's awesome. So what can you say as we close to someone who feels that they're not being heard by their current doctor?
This is so common. And I would say there's a couple of options here. I know I'm kind of self-promoting. I have this great course for women. If you are interested in, hormone therapy, I actually teach you exactly what you need and exactly how to talk to your doctor about it. If that's not something, certainly try looking up the NAMS registry to see a NAMS certified practitioner. And then, while we don't have MIDI yet, but we're kind of growing and moving into more states, really the ultimate goal, of course, for me, for someone helping to build this company is to be able to have doctors or clinicians in every state that takes your insurance that you can see virtually. So, I'm hoping to help you become part of that solution to help, fill in these gaps, not only in knowledge, but in actual, clinicians who can help you make decisions and prescribe you the necessary medications if you need any, or help you with the right supplements, or help you with the right exercise, whatever it might be. But you can always start with, I've got a ton of free resources. I have a class that I teach. And then, if you need to look for a NAMS provider, but, don't be afraid to, I will also end with, to push back with your doctor a little bit, because as doctors start to realize that they're missing some part of education, they may then in turn say, look, we need CME lessons. We need grand rounds. We need talks on menopause, because so many women are asking me, and I realize I don't really know. So don't feel bad, pushing back on your doctor. Don't feel bad to get a second opinion or to see a NAMS doctor. Or, if you live in California, MIDI takes patients in California. Don't be afraid to keep going and being, proactive and getting the right care for you, because it is, again, such a crucial time in a woman's life.
Yes. Yes, and I like to say my second half has been my best half, and who wants to have to deal with all those symptoms if they don't have to? So I guess the
Exactly.
first step is like know that there's solutions for you, and to get the help, rely on that and Google whatever. MIDI is MIDI, so like
Yeah.
you said, it's you can find something in California. If you're not there, it's expanding, and
Yeah. Yeah.
definitely there's somebody probably in your neck of the woods who can help you. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, uh, I'm hopeful that the future is really bright as, I think women just like yourself, it's so inspiring to see you say, this is the second half of my life is so amazing. And I'm doing so much, all the things that I always dreamed about. I hope that as there's more podcast discussion and discourse around menopause and we open up the topic more, and I'm hoping that there's more care that can be readily available, and not just accessible to those who are geographically or financially lucky. We're really going to turn this around, because women aged 45 to 65 really should be running the world. No
That's
questions
right.
asked.
That's right. And if your menopause is going to be 10 years, there's time to get a solution for it, right? It's not like it's going to be over like that. Yeah. So thank you so much for coming on and talking about this subject. I'm sure it's going to be valuable, and I hope people can follow you and get all that amazing information. She's constantly posting, and a lot of like great tips and things. So I love it. Yeah.
Well, thank you for the invitation to speak to your audience. I
Uh-huh.
really appreciate it.
All right. Bye. Thank you so much for tuning into the Living Your Sparked Second Half podcast. If you'd like to watch my guest interviews, you can find the video version of this podcast on my Not Your Average Grandma YouTube channel. Also, you can check out what I have going on at the moment by going to my website at notyouraveragegrandma.com, or find me on Instagram or Facebook at notyouraveragegrandma. If you like this episode, please mention it to a friend, and don't forget to leave a review so I know the topics you like best and can bring you more of that content in upcoming episodes. Last but not least, remember to always listen to that inner voice that will never steer you wrong, and make living from the most sparked place possible your biggest priority. When we do that, we make the world a better place.